introduction slash disclaimer that I am tacking on at the beginning of every one of these videos. Please watch it at least once before you skip it for the rest of them. Surprise! My younger sister filmed a reaction to my reaction videos. So, it is not just me and my feelings and opinions toward these games that you're gonna get her ideas and opinions too. When I first filmed these videos, I was doing it super brief because I never know what to expect out of YouTube. I didn't expect such a huge response from my introduction thing, so maybe you guys actually do want some more. So, these are like 3 to 4 times longer than they originally were, and my sister added a whole lot of input and reminded me of a lot of stuff too along the way. So, I hope you enjoy. And I was also going to say, yeah, I do not have any help editing these videos, so it will take a while for me to get all of these Final Fantasy videos up, especially now that I have even longer content to piece together and present to you. So I really hope it's worth it by the time it's done. Remember, I am a story explorer on an adventure to think critically even while enjoying the fun of whatever I'm watching, playing, or reading. This is my goal. Therefore, it's easy for me to be wrong, and I'm open to comments that disagree with me. I only ask that they are polite and that you provide the evidence-based reasoning backing up what you're saying the same way that I try to make sure that I am too. Emotions always get in the way. I am a very emotional person, but please, we need our brain turned on here. Please leave room for misunderstanding as well, because it could just be that I worded something badly. And equally important is the factor of nostalgia. I am treading all over my own nostalgia when it comes to the Final Fantasy games. I spent my most emotional teenage years playing these things the first time around. I have multiple reasons for the nostalgia to be intense, but with this in mind, remember that I am most likely going to be treading all over your nostalgia as well. And therefore, I hope that you will keep that in mind before leaving a comment, if/when I strike a nerve. All of the following is based on my own experience with these games, and that is specifically the games themselves and what I remember and noticed while playing them. And while replaying them, because some of my opinions changed along the way. And with all of that out of the way, I hope you enjoy these videos. If you do, please like the video or leave a comment so that I know. And if you don't like them, go ahead to dislike it or leave a comment explaining why. Just like I said, please be polite while doing it, because I refuse to let fights happen in my comment section, and I will delete comments if that's what it takes to stop a fight. So, enjoy. For clicking on this video. This one is about Final Fantasy VIII. The main character is Squall, but there's also main characters Renoa, Quista, Stell, Selphie, and Irvin. All the players that you can regularly
and I will never, ever call them
Irvin and all that stuff. This is the first Final Fantasy that I ever played. We didn't have a console yet, so this is the only one that we could play. I think we heard of FF10 first, but I'm not entirely sure about all these details. It's fuzzy. It's probably close to 2 decades ago already. But it was so new it wasn't released yet, Final Fantasy X. When we first heard about it, I'll get into it when we get to Final Fantasy X. But when we first heard about it, it hadn't been released yet. And when my older brother looked at it, I think this is the one we ended up with, because we didn't have console, we only had computers. And Final Fantasy VIII was the only one available on computers, and we're like, hey, what's Final Fantasy? Hey, we can play 8 on the computer, so let's try that one. I think that's how it kind of went. Who knows, maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's kind of my vague impression of what happened. So anyway, Final Fantasy VIII.
I think it was
You're supposed to pause it if you're going to talk,
Sorry.
so that I can possibly add it in there. If I'm still talking there, I can't add the video in there.
It was probably something like that, but I think it was also more along the lines of we could actually get a hold of 8, but it's also, I think we heard of 9 and 10 at the same time.
I don't remember how we heard about 9, unless we heard about 9 through a friend. The only one I remember for sure exactly how we heard about it was through Dad.
I'm pretty sure we heard of 9 and 8 together. It must have been 9 and 8 together, because we heard through him, because we got it through him.
Yeah, well, it would make sense if he told us about both of them, but we could only play 8 because we only had the computer at that time.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah. And then we borrowed PlayStations to play 9 and 10.
Well, and we finally got our own PlayStation. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. It's thanks to this one calling them GFs that my default is to call them GFs, no matter which Final Fantasy I'm talking about. Guardian Forces, Aeons, whatever they're called in each one of the other Final Fantasies, I always default to GF. All thanks to Final Fantasy VIII. My sister,
one to remember.
my younger one, tells me that this one catches a lot of flack for all kinds of reasons, apparently one of them being that people hate the draw system. But whether it's because this was the first one I played or something else, I don't know, I'm fine with it, and I actually kind of like the draw system. Yes, it's a little bit annoying when you're trying to draw and it keeps failing, and it's also a little bit annoying when you finally get enough of something to make it useful, and all of a sudden the next level is available, so like, why did you even bother, but...
Except I found out playing it the second time. Not the second time. The most recent time. Anyway, I found out the most recent time that there are some of the things that the GF can actually learn that will help you with your magic and will actually upgrade it for you.
Oh, I actually knew that a long time ago.
I know, but we weren't doing it for the first while.
But you have to use what you have, so if you have like...
No. It takes what you have, and you have to have a certain amount of what you have, and you take that and upgrade it to a certain amount.
That's what I said. You have to have a certain amount of it in order to turn it into a certain amount of it.
You take like 10 fires, and they'll turn it into like 5 fire eggas for you. Or fire.
Fire is before fire.
Yeah, it'll turn it into like 5 fire.
Yeah, we knew about that a while ago.
So that way of doing it was so much easier to get rid of some of that stuff. So this time around when I was playing
when you have the useless magic.
This time around when I was playing it, I like dumped a bunch of my useless now magic on Edia. So I didn't have it anymore. But it's like, yeah, if I had known that way back in the day, that would have been...
We found out about that a little bit sooner. Because of the numbers and upgrading, we didn't know what was available and when it would be available. And, first and second time through the game, you just don't know as much.
Yeah,
so even if we found out about it, we didn't realize the best way to use it.
First time through the game, I never finished it anyway. I got up to Adele and couldn't get past her.
Yeah, but, like, we have some stuff we found out about, but we didn't realize how to use it until even later.
Yeah.
So it took a bit to find out, and then it took a bit to figure out.
Yeah, it is a difficult thing, especially if you're coming from newer games into that one. It's like, yeah, I understand how totally get how people hate the draw system.
I do, but because of what I say next, I actually like it. The whole way you can use the magic to level up your stats is one of the best systems for getting stronger, in my opinion. Turn base for the win! Anyway, as far as the gameplay, I liked this one because most of it was simple and straightforward enough. You had room to explore. There was still plenty of your involvement that did change how the game turned out, that you did still feel like you were actually playing a game. Not quite to the degree of 7, but it was still very well like it's a game.
And you can make a massive mistake that actually ends your game without game over.
I'm getting there. As in, literally, I will never forget the shock of discovering that if you don't do the missile part right, you get to watch a video of Squall dying as the garden explodes.
Technically, you don't see anybody in it. You just see the video that actually blows up the garden. You don't see anybody.
Really?
Yeah.
The one where he's going like that is the one where you save them?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I got them all mixed up in my head.
Yes, you did. The one where Squall holds up his hands in the flash of light, that is when the garden picks up and starts flying.
Okay.
So yeah, you mix them up.
I made a video of it. Was I highly annoyed that there wasn't enough video content of Rinoa and Squall together? Yes.
Of Squall in general.
There wasn't enough video content of Squall. Or Rinoa. Or anybody else. Well, Squall and Rinoa together. Did I wish there were more videos overall that showed people? Let alone people actually interacting? Yes, I do. I seriously wish there was more. But anyway. Anything else about gameplay before I move to story and character? The GFs syncing with the character they are on, so they come quicker when called, etc. The different things that the GFs can learn. All of it, really. I'm trying to remember what I did not like as much. I mean, the friggin' ending fights is never ending. For the love of sanity, this one is hard to beat because the final boss has like 4 or 5 different forms because it keeps mutating.
Literally, no, it's more like 6. Again, I just finished it not that long ago.
Yes, 6 was enough. 6. I can insert that.
I was also actually going to say the stupid tutorials near the beginning of the game. Oh, you don't know how to put on a GF? Let me tutorial it for you. Oh, you don't know
to go.
Put a Lebby tutorial for you. I'm like,
that's one of the ones where you can't skip the tutorial.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. So the more you play it,
Like
it's
up and walk away.
You have seen. No, but you can't. You have to sit there and press X.
Yeah.
there are
Like I said, you're the one playing the game.
There are places within that
talking.
tutorial that will stop if you don't press X.
Are you paying attention? Yes. Forms, because it keeps mutating, and if any of them kill you, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. There's no saving in between mutating forms. And on top of that, there's a luck-based roll of the dice where stuff you can do, like your magic or your attack or your items, gets randomly yeeted, so if you lose vital stuff too soon...
It's also random who you get stuck there. So if you have crappy characters, Squall is the only one that will appear. If you have other crappy characters, they just might appear.
You got excited, so all of a sudden you're yelling about everything.
You sit there and you're like, do I really want to bother letting this person live, or do I want them to die?
Yes, I forgot that. It's randomized who's there until they die, and then another random one replaces it, and then they die, and then a random one. I was not prepared the first time I played this game. Nowhere near a high enough level. I think this might be one where I cheated and used my brother's game to finish it. Not sure. I don't remember how it all went. Either way, I also don't remember how many times I started it or how far I got each time. I just know that I myself have finished this at least once. Not the first time through, but I have actually finished it. The card game. I don't remember between this one and the card game in 9. I think it was 9 that I sort of kind of figured out and managed to win the way I intended to.
I like 9 better.
I was just going to say, later on in 10, I talk about Blitzball and how there's, if you look up online, it doesn't tell you in the game from what I remember, but online, they're like, yeah, no matter how much planning you do, there is a randomized factor that will, like, completely nix everything you just carefully planned. I wonder if there's a factor of that in the card game.
I don't think so.
Whichever 8 or 9, I wonder if there is also a randomized.
9's card game is very easy to play.
You almost get to it. So it is 8 that I couldn't figure out.
As long as you stay
halfway
consistent with 9 and you consistently play the 9 card game, it's actually not that bad to play.
One of them I did figure out. I just couldn't remember which one was which. I think it was 9 I figured out.
8 is somewhat frustrating.
Because I remember playing in the tournament and I got pretty good.
Yeah, 9.
But yeah, so it would be 8 that there was something about it that it just, I thought I had figured it out, and every time I thought I figured it out, nope, that's
8,
not right either.
I think, is the other one that's like, if it is frustrating, the card game. There is probably something really simple that we're missing.
Either there's something simple, or like I say, there is actually a randomized factor that the game doesn't tell you is in it.
Yeah.
So,
very possibly.
I can't even remember what the card game looks like in 8 right now. So, anyway, moving on. And this is going to sound random, but I remembered it later and have to mention it. So I'm putting it here. Stuff like the train. This makes it a game, people. You have to put the code in while avoiding the guards or the alarms go off and fights happen, and the whole thing is on a timer because you're on a train speeding toward its destination. Yes, man, it's hard and frustrating and has you on the edge of your seat the first time or two you try it, which is arg, but also fun, dude. This is a game. And another thing I remembered, something I didn't like, was how when you separate the characters to take some over to the missile base, be forewarned. It is super annoying how those characters are unplayable for a while, and therefore you can't level them up, and therefore when you do get them back again, they are so far behind the others that it's frustrating. So be strategic. You've been warned. Now, moving on to the story and the characters. Which one should I even start with? Because both will take a while. And they overlap. Characters. We'll go with that one because there were several places, like the further you get in the game, there are several places where it literally doesn't matter whether you've got Selphie, whether you've got Zell, whether you've got Irvin, it doesn't matter who you've got there with you. They react the same way to what's going on. They pretty much, almost word for word, like they basically say the same thing. My point is, like what I'm saying, it's across the board with like anything, any story I watch. There are some scenes where it's like a really good author knows how to cut a bunch of characters out because the more you have, the more chaos ensues, and it's just not working. Characters start to feel not like themselves because too many people are there. This is a problem I have with like the Marvel movies where everybody's all of a sudden there and half of them don't really feel like themselves because there's too many people to spotlight.
Yeah.
Not everybody can have a spotlight on them at once. People are gonna get left out, and they're gonna either be left out, completely sidelined, or they're just not gonna quite feel like themselves.
Yeah.
Because you literally can't spotlight everybody. That's my problem. Yeah. The bigger cast you have, the more of a problem of that you have. So that's why I prefer a slightly smaller cast. And that's the problem with this one. I'm not saying they aren't unique, and I'm not saying I don't like them. I'm not saying they don't have epic moments. I'm just saying the further it goes, naturally, because of the progression of the story,
that there are like those certain
slightly
parts that are actually pretty
and
fun.
melding. Anyway, Sophie is a cutie. I don't know what else to say about her. She is just a cutie. Perhaps a little too ditzy on one hand, perhaps a little too childish. I don't know, but she's so cute even when ditzy. I can't help liking her. She and Squall were/are the two I relate to the most, I think, because I myself and or the people closest to me are far more similar to them than anyone else, I think. Like, I feel like when I was younger, I feel like me and Sophie were very similar. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. So liking her so much, and probably Squall too, but we'll get to him, is kind of personal, you could say. That's kind of my guess looking back at it. Because otherwise, I don't entirely understand why I like Sophie so much, because, yeah, anyway. Zell is a little annoying. Like someone with ADHD that desperately needs meds. Because he's far too through the roof for me, who also has ADHD, remember? To handle on a regular basis. I feel exactly the same as Squall for ages when it comes to this guy. Thank goodness he does calm down a little as the game progresses.
What was Zell's quote? When you're heading back to the garden, before the missiles hit, if you bring Zell with you, and there's that idiot that's running after the train, Zell's quote is actually kind of funny when he's like, hey, Squall, there's like some idiot chasing us.
Yes, I remember that.
But I don't know if I've ever brought Irvin or Quistis or Renoa, so I'm not entirely... Well, no, I have brought Renoa, never mind. So I'm not entirely sure what Quistis' and Irvin's quotes were, but Zell's is pretty funny there.
Quistis is okay, but also a tiny bit creepy, because I think she herself even admits to realizing she's doing it. It being she is trying to be the big sister, but also trying to be the girlfriend of Squall. All at the same time. And it's like, girl, pick one. Seriously. Like right now. Plus, she's a tad too bossy for me to fully enjoy. And oh my gosh, I forgot stuff here that I bring up later, so I'll just leave it here, i.e. we'll get back to Quistis. Irvin is kinda cool, but kinda weird. Though that matches with the fact he's part of the group, but also not, because of the whole backstory thing.
If you go to the village that Rain lived in, I brought Irvin and Zell. So the what was it? The suit of armor moves.
Yes.
And I think it's Squall makes the comment, Zell, knock it off. Kind of thing. And then it moves more. And Irvin's like, seriously, Zell, knock it off. And Zell's like, but I'm not doing anything. Up into Zell's room. Yeah. If you bring Irvin, I think it is. Zell's like, you're not allowed to touch squat.
But that's like way near the beginning.
The screen goes like blank, and all of a sudden you see this bang bang type of thing, and Zell's like, ah! Because Irvin touched something or other that was on his wall.
Of course Irvin did.
Yeah. And
I didn't say much about Irvin because...
the only unique part, though, is that if you bring Irvin up into Zell's room.
My point was Irvin. I didn't say much about Irvin. I made it sound like he's weird and I don't like him or something. I do. There's many moments where I do like him. He's just also a little bit weird and kind of like, dude, I feel like Renoa. Just get back there. Irvin, knock it off.
He's a little too much of a womanizer.
He's also arrogant, like you said. He's arrogant.
He is arrogant to a degree.
But, like we were saying, it's because he's confused about what's going on, because he remembers stuff and they don't seem to, so he's like, what am I supposed to say? What am I not supposed to say? What is the dynamic here? I am lost.
Yeah.
So he's confused, and you find out later that's why, part of why he's weird.
Yeah. So he says himself, sharpshooters, they're loners.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also partly like, what is that word? It's almost like he has a picture of what they're supposed to be like, and it's not necessarily what they're actually like. Mm-hmm. You just like to portray it that way. Like our stupid cat that likes to pretend that she's a lone wolf, and yet she's always right beside us purring. Like, I thought you wanted to be left alone, and yet you won't leave the room. You're like right here with us. That's kind of Irvin. He's like, I'm a lone wolf, but that really don't leave me behind. Mm-hmm. Anyway, when I first filmed this video, I kept it really brief because people don't seem to like my really long videos, so I didn't think anybody wanted too much, so I was keeping it brief. Now, given a response to the introduction video, maybe people do want more, so now we're adding a bunch of the talks, and she can help me remember.
I just played that game like, a year ago? I just played 8 a year ago-ish.
When was the last time I could even play it? When was the last time I had a computer capable of it?
In the fourplex, you were gonna play 7 on your computer. Because
I played 7 in the fourplex. That's why it's been 3.5 years-ish since I played it.
You were going to play 8 as well on your computer.
Yeah, but I didn't.
I don't think you started. Don't know if you even started it.
Anyway, Renoa is seriously annoying for the first bit. Because she's so incredibly clueless and sadly wants to do the right thing, sure, but what a classic example of the intentions being not enough. She does so many dumb things before she finally calms down and starts listening to the people around her. Squall, I adore this guy. I had a post on my community tab that I took down where I mentioned that he is one of my cartoon crushes, and it's true. No matter how old I get, when I see this guy, I get the whole squee little fangirl crushing on her crush butterflies feeling that makes me bouncy and giggly and full-on early to mid-teens vibe no matter how old I currently am. And it's a tad embarrassing, but too true not to describe that way for me to describe it that way. I have to describe it that way no matter how embarrassing it is because that's legit what it feels like every time I see him. Playing Kingdom Hearts and he... Squall! In a way, it's likely him that I hold other male characters I come across up to, whether I realize it or not, to see how they compare. Because he is totally an ultimate type of mine, and because that took root while I was in my mid-teen years, it will probably never change.
But it's like I say, I think it's part of the reason is because we understand him to a certain degree. He's a quiet introvert who would rather be sitting in the corner just paying attention and people watching than being out there and being the leader.
Yes.
He's in his head, and if you really pay attention, he's very busy in his head.
Yeah.
Like, he says one thing, but then most of it happens in his head. He's, like, thinking it through in his head, but this part's the only part that comes out voiced.
We had this whole conversation earlier, and I wanted to add it somewhere in it. Other than that, and I'd say that's brought on because of all the ridiculousness that he went through as a child. Mm-hmm. But, like, it's like nobody wants him, so he, like, put himself into his own little shell, and then everybody's like, would you talk? 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 He's like, fine, this is my opinion. And they're like, oh my gosh, why are you so mean?
Yeah, well, he's blunt.
Yes.
That's the other thing we said.
I was going to say he's comfortable at being an introvert. He's one of the examples of it's not so much shyness. It's more like aversion to socialness, but it's not in a shy way. It's more like because he doesn't like people because of what people have done to him. He's just like, it's like a wall to protect himself or whatever. But he's a true introvert where he's perfectly comfortable with who he is. He doesn't want to talk. He's not going to until you like shove him in the corner and then he bites you and you're like, why'd you bite me?
But that's also why I said earlier.
Yes, an important fact that you brought up earlier.
He was horrible. He's terrible at the beginning of the game. Yeah, why is he terrible? He hates Seifer. Like, seriously.
And he's disliked him for a long, long time. They grew up
super
together.
long time. And he doesn't like Zell. So you send those three off on a mission.
You're echoing.
And then it's like, well, how else do you think he's going to react?
Yeah.
And then later, he ends up with Zell again. And he ends up with Selphie, who he only just met. He doesn't know her.
Like,
and
picture that person sitting in the corner who's trying to read a book. And somebody, every, 5 words you get, if even that much, every time you pick the book up, they start talking to you, and you're like... And then they shut up, so you're like this, and then start talking to you. Mm-hmm. That's what Squall's like around Zell. He's like, peace... Whoa, Zell. Okay, are you done? Okay, good. Peace and... Zell again. Are you done yet? He's got Quistis constantly being weird around him and bossy around him. He's got Seifer nagging him and shoving him and literally cutting his face open and all this stuff. And you got Zell that won't stop talking.
Well, and it's go talk to a wall with Quistis.
But everybody takes that quote slightly out of context because they forget what she said before he said that. She was basically saying, I just want to bare my soul. Like, I don't have to have an answer. He's like, then go talk to a wall. Like, people take that quote slightly out of context. They think he's being nasty. Like, she literally said, I want to talk to a wall. What is wrong with you? And he's like, well, if you want to go talk to a wall, then go talk to a wall.
She didn't literally say that. She basically said that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
But if you think about social distancing, Squall is like the epitome of social distancing. He doesn't want to be social. He doesn't want to be
That's why I said that word, but I forget what it was earlier.
Society. He doesn't want to be there.
But, like, think about it. Why would he be like that? Because
and then, like
he
I
grew
say,
up like
he's
that. Like,
extremely
his
blunt.
mother died as soon as he was born, so his whole village shipped him off to an orphanage. The girl that he considered his big sister, like the only person protecting him, vanished. Where did his dad go? All of this
he
stuff.
Never knew his parents.
Without meaning to, both of his parents.
I'll probably remember what I said earlier in, like, the middle of the night and be like, aha, that's what it is.
Yes, the what is that stupid word? Eat that stupid word. But anyway, that's, yeah.
But it is one of those things where almost, like, people probably think he's an ass because they're technically misunderstanding his character type.
Because, like we said earlier, too, if I couldn't hear his inner thoughts, then I'd probably misunderstanding him and I wouldn't like him either. But because I saw his inner thoughts, I can relate to that. I know what that feels like when people just won't leave you alone, when you just want to be left alone.
To get you to talk to them or talk with them
talk to
or
me.
whatever.
I want to know your deepest, darkest
to.
feelings. And it's like, what if I don't think that's any of your business right now? In his face, that his face literally just got cut open by this guy because he wouldn't quit egging him on. So, like, yeah.
And he barely made
Do you
this
think he's
mission
human or
because
not?
he barely went and got the GF that he was supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, he
like
almost
Seifer's mission in life
didn't
is to
get
bother
to do this
Squall.
mission because of
He backs
Seifer.
him right into the corner before Squall does anything back to him, and then Squall gets in trouble for it.
Squall, I feel like if you're not necessarily like that yourself, or you don't know someone who's like that, you probably are going to misunderstand him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like and dislike who you want. That's fine. I probably hate characters that you might like too, but it's just...
Probably. And this is just working through.
Extremely good reasons for being that way.
This is also working through and actually, like, putting a little more detail to, like, I mean, I say some things about why I like them, but sometimes it's hard for me to, like, so that you understand what I mean by that? Because, like, you use the same words to describe different things and they start to lose their meaning. Well, here you go. Here's a little more in-depth of what it is that makes me like him so much, why I relate to him so much.
Well, and like I say, he is also the character type that is actually a good leader. He can be an extremely good leader. He just doesn't want to be. Because that makes him the center of attention. And he doesn't want to be
There's also
the
a lot of
center of
responsibility,
attention.
and he didn't think he was ready for that.
He wasn't quite ready for it. Even though he fell into the role quite smoothly,
Which is proof
ready.
that he's got the makings of a really good leader if he could slide into it that easy.
I just say he was because everybody just naturally started looking to him. Like he was made the leader on that first mission that him and Zell and Selphie went on. He was made the leader for that.
I thought Seifer was the leader.
Seifer was the leader in their seed test.
That's what I was talking about, seed test.
I'm talking about the seed mission where they go to help Renoa.
My gosh, you're talking about way over there.
That's not way over there. That's right after the seed test. Come on, dude.
I thought you were talking about the test this whole time.
Hour of the game.
You said the first mission.
Actual seed mission. He was set as the leader.
Yes.
And then after that, everybody else just kind of fell into line of, you're the leader.
Yeah, but I'm talking about when there are occasions when people say someone is a good leader when technically they aren't yet. They just have the makings of a good leader. No. Some people are not leaders, period. End of story, even when they try to be. Some people have the potential to be, but they need some shaping and some growing up and maturity and some guidance, and then they will be an awesome leader. Some people are basically awesome leaders right off the bat. Battery's getting low. Oop. 15%. To mention other characters, at least, because awkwardness of all awkwardness, I also had a crush on Laguna. I adore that guy, too, with one exception that slightly sours my opinion of him being the way he abandoned Squall. The rest of it wasn't really his fault. It was complicated, he didn't think he would be away from Rain for so long, etc. It's really sad and complicated. Like, really, really sad and complicated. But no matter how many hours me and my sister talk about this, and reason through what might have happened, I cannot, at the end of the day, fathom how Laguna managed to so thoroughly abandon Squall, apart from him simply being an irresponsible jackass that did it on purpose, which is weird, because that doesn't fit anything else about his character.
Well, part of the problem is, he completely abandoned Squall, and yet he's very focused on Alone.
That's what I said. It doesn't fit with the rest of his character. I mean, Alone was special because of how he was connected to her in the beginning.
But he went back to the orphanage and picked her up from the orphanage. Yeah, okay, so it was specifically to protect her from Adele, but at the same time,
and
why didn't he go get Squall? Yeah. And then by the time he goes back, it's like, well, he was gone.
Says, well,
I'm like, yeah, but Eddie knew where he went.
Yeah. It's like, oh, he was so busy, he just kind of forgot. Well, that's sort of an excuse for kind of later on, but, like, there's time back there.
Which, I mean, like, on one hand, it's kind of Laguna. But on the other hand, I'm like, you would think Squall would be a little bit more important to him.
Like we said before, I mean, the possibility of not wanting to raise him...
And this might be spoilers to people, I don't know.
The possibility of not wanting to, like, raise him at first because he's so upset about losing Rain, that actually happens in real life a lot. Because no matter at what point we think it, there's a kind of a reason that works for certain spots, but not for others. Like, especially when he went back and got alone and just leave Squall there. Did he figure that it wasn't worth it and he was fine where he was by this point, so he'll just not bother? Like,
he goes back there after Squall's already at Garden.
Yeah, but I mean, by the time he's an adult, he's like at Garden. If you're like, well,
when
by
he was
now...
still a kid, I think. When he, like, basically just went to Garden.
I forget how old he was.
It wasn't not long after Alone left, I believe, so he would be about 8.
It's literally, people keep that in mind,
that's
too,
with his personality. He was in Garden for, like, 10 years.
10 years in Garden?
I believe, because he's, like, 18.
Adrift student with nobody to, like, be his parent.
I could be wrong. My book is all the way out there where it might tell me. Under a bunch of books.
I wonder why I haven't read it. Yeah, as far as I can tell from the timeline, we've been over this like a bazillion times, like I said.
Yeah, it's just
something weird and doesn't make sense about it.
Especially since by that point, Kairos and Ward were back with Laguna too, and you would think Kairos would have said something about it and been like, Laguna, go get your son. Like,
no kidding.
It is just a weird debate that I swear will just always
like,
be
I
debate.
know there's a factor of it where, like, when women are pregnant, they form a bond with their child. The man, the father, is not able to form that bond until the baby is born, and it has been reported by many, 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 many fathers that are waiting for their child to be born, that they're like, I don't feel anything for this child. What is wrong with me? I'm a father of this child that's going to be born, and yet I don't feel anything for it. And people have to be reassured all the time that that's normal. You can't touch the baby, even if you can kind of feel it, whatever. You don't see it. You don't have any contact with it. It makes sense.
Yeah,
but then, like, for Laguna...
good reason why he was more attached in many respects to Alone.
Yes, because, like, he could touch her and stuff. Because men form that bond rather quickly with their child once they are born and they start holding them. It actually happens pretty fast. But he never had the chance to hold him when he was a baby. He was how old the first time he saw him?
Well, that's
so
the thing.
In a way, you could say, by accident and on purpose, maybe he was forming a wall so that he didn't get close to him for whatever reason.
The Squall off to the orphanage, I'm not even sure when that would have been and who decided it.
I think they were saying that was pretty fast when he was a baby. They couldn't raise him. That he would do better there.
Yeah, that's where I say I don't quite understand that either, because you would think
possibly because there just wasn't enough kids in the village?
You would think that, but there would be someone who would have been able to raise him for...
Who knows?
I feel like that was a bit of a plot hole, the whole thing.
I feel like it was a plot hole within his character and his story of
and Squall and how they got, it could have been fleshed out better.
Yes.
Anyway.
But even Laguna and Rain, and you know what? The whole fact that is Squall's parents, it would have been really nice, even if they didn't make it more obvious, if they had had a proper reunion between Squall and Laguna. I mean, maybe an apology would have been nice. And then, no, I'm really not as interested in General Caraway and Julia, but still, Renoa's roots and why she is like she is and all that stuff. Seriously, guys, there is a huge backstory there that we barely got anything of. And so, yes, there are a lot of other characters, but that's the only ones I'm going to spend any time on, because it would take too long to touch on any of the others. There's Seifer and his people, there's Edna, there's etc., etc. And while all of them had their unique things, it's like watching dramas where different ones probably stuck out for different people in different ways because of personality types. What? Where does Edna come from?
I have no idea! Edna!
Oh, yeah! It has been way too long since I played FF8. I adore that game! I did not have time, I don't have the ability. I literally can't remember everything. I was close. Edna and Eddie are pretty close. And most of the other characters are bad guys, or partial bad guys, or just so complicated, like Alone, it's hard to put a finger on how I really feel about them.
But even, sorry, I want to say something about Alone. Even Alone, like, that is super sad.
I did not say I did not like her. I just said she's very complicated, so giving my opinion on her is a little hard.
I'm going to give my opinion. She lost her parents. She got basically adopted by Rain and Laguna, and then she loses Rain, picks up Squall, but then she loses Squall, and then she feels like she destroyed Laguna's life because
that's the whole reason all that was happening, is because she thought it was entirely her fault.
Yeah.
So she was trying to fix it all.
She feels like she broke Laguna and Rain apart because he wasn't there to see Squall born, and when Rain died, because he was looking for her. Like, even alone, you're like, that is actually a kind of a really sad, complicated story. And then she starts throwing him into the past because she wants to change it.
But see, that's why I say, and I get into it if you stop interrupting it. But at the same time, I wanted to interrupt it because I wanted this stuff added. But that's why I say it would actually be really cool if they did make that separate game or something. Because there is so much story for those characters.
Yeah. Laguna and Rain, Kairos, Ward alone.
Yes. There's there's that big story there. You keep seeing such little glimpses of it that's like, I want more, and I adore Laguna, I want more, and Rain is so sweet. And it's
I want more Kairos! I don't know why again! I love Kairos! Probably just because of his dynamic with Laguna, and the way he bounces off Laguna, and the way Laguna bounces off Kairos. Like, I wish there was more Kairos in that game too, and that he got a little bit more fleshed out. Ward's not bad, but I've never particularly liked the type of character of Ward. But I'm like, Kairos and Laguna are awesome for some reason. When those two get together, you're just like...
Because, like, even if you go all the way back to Laguna with Julia, it's like there is so much in Laguna's story that we don't get to see.
Like you say, Eyes on You.
Yes.
That song.
That famous song is not about Squall and Manoa. Julia is singing
and her
about
watching
Laguna.
him sitting in the bar and his eyes are always on. And just knowing that, you're like, this
it's like these two were so close. There's such a close story there that almost happened, and you barely get to see that. You don't understand the weight of it because it's like, and then things happen to take it away, and you're like, but
if you don't ask when Kairos comes in,
that's what I say,
and finds
because
Laguna
they show you a
again.
snippet here, and then the next time you see them, they're way over here, and then you're not even sure where you are. Like, how do these things even fit in one coherent timeline? And I don't think you're seeing them in order. It's like all over the place.
Sometimes I don't know if they are. It's within those questions that Rain tells you what happened to Julia.
Yeah.
And about that song.
Yeah, because she knows about the song. Yeah.
Yeah, but because she says it's one of her favorites.
But also, like, that's where it's specified.
One of her
favorites. If you look at the lyrics of the song and you're like, see the scene where Laguna and Julia actually interact before he takes off, you can figure it out just from the lines and from that scene.
You should.
Okay, what I said about FF7 being my longest reaction video, it won't be anymore because, like, this is 41 minutes long and that was 21 minutes long. Adding this together, this is going to be a long reaction.
But you had to pause that because I think Buster wants out. I will also actually add, how on earth that freaking whole plan to get Adele sealed away actually worked is beyond me. I don't even remember all the details of that plan, but I'm just like, it was a plan that Laguna came up with.
I was going to say, anything Laguna come up with, it's kind of like Jack Sparrow, where it's like, what? Wow, it worked.
Yeah, it was...
That can't possibly... It did.
It was very weird how that worked. But at the same time, Adele's pretty full of herself, so...
Arrogant people are actually way easier to trick than you think they are because they are so full of themselves, they think that's no way to trick them, and that's why they get tricked.
And that's probably why his plan managed to work. Kind of like how his plan actually managed to work at the end, too. But anyway.
Yeah, anyway. Or just kind of a little too backgroundy, like Rain, who seems super sweet, but you barely see her, and like Kairos and Ward, who I liked, but anyway. What I said about them meshing together, I mean like selfie than the rest of them, into one big blob is legit too, which always frustrated me. I didn't really notice it at first, but the more I play that game, I'm more like the further you go in the game, the less anyone but Squall and Rinoa really matter. And yes, I'm a little too fixated in not changing. Like, I love my characters, they're my favorite characters, I use them, and I am bad at deviating just to see what happens with others. And two, I keep on saying it's the further you go. Even not playing the game through, I've watched other people play it through, and I've watched videos, and I've watched clips of stuff, so it's like, even if I've only played it like 3 years, I've seen a lot of it, so I feel like I know it's better.
It's been around for over 20 years.
But anyway, continuing. Probably at least in part due to the fact that there are so many of them, but you can only use 3 at a time to fight with, and that's generally who's with you when you have your story sections as a result. So they kind of have to be super similar by a certain point, or using different people would change the story too much, if that makes any sense. Now to the story then.
Certain parts, yeah.
This story, no matter what else you throw in there, at its core, is a love story. And I think that's perhaps what messes some people up, because they thought it was something else or something bigger. But it's not. It's a love story. A twofold one, really. Because Laguna and Rain and Squall and Renoa. And both were affected by...
I would almost argue more like a threefold, because it's Laguna and Julia, and then Laguna and Rain, and then Squall and Renoa. To a degree.
Well, I don't know if there's quite... I don't remember. You're the one that just played it.
He was infatuated. And I think Julia was on the point of being in love.
Yeah, they actually probably could have made a good couple. You don't really know Julia well enough. But my problem is that how much do you really see them? Because when I said twofold, because there's also Julia and Caraway, you just don't get to see that one.
But like I say, if you think about Eyes on Me song, and you put that to Julia and Laguna...
Then it becomes a little bit heartbreaking. Because, really, Julia didn't know what happened to him, right? No. When you find out later on, she's, like, met this guy, and she's starting to actually have feelings for him. They have one night where they get to talk, and all of a sudden, poof, where did he even go? Is he still alive?
Yeah, and he was the one that encouraged her to make a song and actually sing.
So cute, and he gets those cramps.
So I feel
so nervous, he gets the leg cramps and can't walk, and Kara's and we're like... Oh,
I feel like it was that one time that they actually talked, and poor Julia got so heartbroken after that. Because, like you say, no, she didn't know what happened to him.
Yeah, that
he went off,
hard.
And that's when he ended up at Lunatic Pandora. But then after that, that's when they fell off the cliff, and he washed up on the shore by Rain's
There was probably a lot of people that went, where on earth did Laguna go?
Yeah, Kairos included. That's why he went looking, because he found Ward, and he's like, okay, you're okay here for now, so I'm going to go find Laguna, because even Kairos and Ward didn't even know what happened. So Kairos spent like a year, I think he'd spent looking for Laguna.
And that's one of the things about FF8 that makes it a little bit unique. Most of the others, like, spell out everything for you. In 8, you have to actually go digging and think about these characters and stuff. That's why I say the core of it is like a love story, at least twofold, if not threefold, like you say. And there is other aspects to it. I'm not saying there isn't, because there's all the Ultimisia and Adele and all that stuff. Because even everything that happens with, what's her name? It's not Edna.
Edia!
You are impossible!
A-D-E-D-E-A! Edia! Whether everybody says it that way, I don't know, I don't care. It's not Edna.
This video is going to take so long to edit, and that's not the original stuff. Edia, everything that even happened with her. When you think about what happened, I don't like Headmaster Sid. That's probably the only Sid I can think out of any of the games where I actually dislike him. I'm so mad at him for just, like, I say it in my original video, but, like, the fact he's just like, oh, you bunch of 18-year-olds, this is all happening, but you know what? I got more important stuff. Come on. You're like,
he threw this 18-year-old into the middle of a war.
Him and all of them. He abandoned his students.
Yeah.
He's the headmaster of this school. These people like, Squall grew up 10 years underneath his teachings. And he just like, I'm done. My mission's accomplished. No, it wasn't, dude. You were their teacher.
Now
you were the headmaster. Yeah, sorry. My name is You made me mad. But you do also, like, you feel bad for Edia and her connection with Sid and everything that was happening there. And it's like, I mean, there's so many hidden nuggets of such deep things about such deep backstories and connections and things that happen. And so many times you're like, wait a minute, my heart.
If you go and find the village that was Rain's village and you go in there, there's a few parts there where you're just like, aww. Because you're like seeing these little shadows of Rain and whatnot. And then I think it's the flower woman makes some comment about her and whatnot.
And see, like I say later in the original thing too, that's part of what, like, actually bothers me a little bit, is how, like, I start to question if even Squall even realized that these were his parents.
He does so.
No, I know he does.
Taro says right to his face, it's a really good thing you look like your mother.
Dude. But my point is, but at the same time, you almost feel like if it was a movie, you should have had a close-up of his face. Facial reaction change going, my dad. Like, stuff like that. And because of how old this game is, and the things that they weren't able to quite do yet, which is why you don't properly see Renoa and Squall kiss, because they didn't have the capability to look like they were actually touching each other back then, from what I remember. Back then, they couldn't actually make a proper kissing scene yet. Yeah, it looked really weird. So that's why, like, they're really tiny, and you're like, come back here, I want to see that. But, like, so some of this stuff, maybe they just didn't have the capability of doing
this. This is why I say,
I say it in the video,
if you don't go back there to that village, then yeah, you don't see those little shadows. But Squall does have a reaction when you go to Rain's house and you go upstairs and she appears. He actually does have a reaction there. What that reaction is, off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Well, and that's the thing. And like I say, like the game, for some reason, I don't understand why the game was so bent on making it so incredibly subtle. And because they made it so subtle, I think that was part of why they couldn't have a proper big reaction, because they were making it too subtle. So it wouldn't work to all of a sudden have a big reaction, because even there, they were trying to make it subtle. And I'm like, that's a little unfair.
Well, because even there, the way Cairo says that, because you're like, wait, what? You know his father? And then you're like, wait, it's Laguna. Duh. Like, it takes you that minute, even when Cairo says that.
But anyway, and this is an hour long, and
sorry,
it's after
I wanted
midnight.
to clarify that again.
And both were affected by previous crushes, Laguna with Julia, Renoa with Seifer, but both ended up coupled with the person that they truly loved in the end, i.e. Squall with Renoa and Laguna with Rain. And so, while you've got a lot going on, including the whole fact that there's a bunch of teenagers that are still in school, I mean, can you even call it college yet when they're 18? No. Them learning how to be adults. That's actually a big part of the story, too. My word, the selfishness of most of the adults in this one, by the way. But while that's a major sub-theme, the main plot I will stick to in my conventions is a love story. And as such, the crossover to characters I have to mention is how I didn't really notice the first time I played it, I don't think. But oh my word, the main characters apart from Squall and Renoa, meddlers that constantly tease Squall and get worse and worse through the whole game. But honestly, Quistis is the worst for it. She is constantly undermining Squall. You're the leader, yes! But don't worry, me and my posse have already decided all the big stuff, so just do what we tell you to do and everything will be hunky-dory. Squall carries Renoa down the bridge and finds them waiting at the other end. I actually really want to slap the lot of them. Like,
before that, when the gardens are fighting, that's where I really want to strangle them. Because I think even the doctor, she was a little bit more tactful, especially there. That is more when I want to strangle them.
Well, because it's like the weird, ridiculous
you degree. Guys, are you freaking kidding me?
It's the weird, illogical.
He is relying on you for one thing, because he sent you all off to do specific things. And then for another thing, what exactly do you expect Squall to be able to do that Zell could not have done?
Yeah.
Squall is all of a sudden the leader. He is trying to
be a responsible leader and do what a leader is supposed to do. That's the point. Like in any other story, that would have been the point when the romance story where like Squall goes, you know what? My love is more important than responsibility. Handle it yourself. I'm going for Renoa. Everybody'd be like, dude. But no, he's a responsible adult and goes, you know what? I'm going to be the leader. And they're like, no.
He also was torn. But he wanted to be the responsible leader and be like, no.
He literally just
I'm a leader right
and all of a sudden everybody's lives are on the line.
Yeah.
And they're like, be selfish, Squall, come on. It's like the game is like,
no,
we have to make
could have stolen that stupid green flying thing.
But any other Final Fantasy, they're like, Squall has to go and get Renoa so that they can end up over there so that they can do that. So, let's have this happen and this happen. And they're like, oh look, Squall has to go over there. And this one is like, all of the characters are
her and she tells him that she has his ring. She could have told him anywhere that Zell gave her his ring. It's not the only thing that happens, because once you land, then you go into the garden, and it's just the two of them. They land, they're standing outside of Galbadia Garden. She tells him that Zell gave her his ring, and Squall's just like, I'm gonna kill him. You better be careful.
I love the way he's called it the turn.
But that's all that happened there. And then they went inside and everybody was waiting for them.
My point is, it is incredibly awkward. Like, why did the writers even do that? It's like everybody in the room was deciding, like, if we're going to go around the table, do you think it should be Squall? Yes. Do you think it should be Squall? Yes. You're like, creators,
but
get yourself out of the story here. What is going on?
It's not that I have a problem with that it was Squall. Literally, what was it that you figured Squall could have done that Zell could not?
But that's what I mean. It's like as if all of a sudden we're watching the creators that are writing Final Fantasy VIII.
Supposed to end up with her.
Each character is one of the creators, and we have to go around the room. Do you think it should be Squall? The person was, yes, because it must be Squall. And you're like,
yeah.
This is not making sense.
It also infuriates me because I'm like, he was relying on them already. He sent Zell off to do that because he was relying on Zell. Yeah. He was actually putting faith in Zell that Zell could do that. And yet that's part of Quistis' problem. Oh, you could rely on other people sometimes. I'm like, he is relying on you.
That's why I
say,
like,
he also has his own duties as the leader.
I get more annoyed with the more of the characters the further it goes, because it starts piling up how often they do this, where it's almost like he can't win. No matter what he decides to do, they're like, no.
But
It's like, okay, this time he chooses something more like that. And they're like, no, you're being silly, go over here. It's like, no matter what he chooses, it's like this one, they said the dumb, so pick that one. So the next time he picks this one, no, and he picks this one. It's like, guys.
Yeah, you're like pushing and shoving him around when you're like, you have no right to do that.
Oh, it's like, that's not how you treat a friend. That's not how you treat a leader. That's not how you treat anybody.
No, they didn't really let him voice his own thoughts.
No, they cut him off, and they
you
like
know
they think
what?
they know him so well.
Sometimes when someone says whatever, they literally mean whatever.
Yeah, sometimes it means whatever. Sometimes it's like, you're not going to listen to me if I try to talk anyway. And he goes to try to talk, and they're like, oh, you're probably going to say whatever, aren't you? He's like, see, you don't listen to me when I try to talk. But I was trying to say with the bridge part, it's a milestone moment where he himself, finally, in his own mind, without anybody else's thoughts intruding into his brain, he is finally realizing that he cares about Renoa.
Without anybody
else getting in his way, he has made the decision, you know what? She is so important to me that I don't care how silly I look, I don't care how long this is going to take, I don't care if it's dangerous, I don't care whatever. I'm making the decision to be like this and care about her and go. And they're all like, tee, you funny weirdo.
At least they don't do that when he decides to go up into space with her, too, because he's going to find alone. At least they don't do it there. Because he makes this a choice to go up to space for the same reason, and he's just like, no, this is what I set out to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to find alone.
I think they finally start, eventually they finally start trusting in his decisions. And like you said, we should, after all that irritation of them getting in the way. About, on one hand, he probably wouldn't have ended up with Renoa if they hadn't meddled a little bit.
To a certain extent, I feel like if he ever did end up with Renoa, it would have been a long time later.
And he possibly would have missed her because she would give up and go to someone else. He is very closed off on purpose because he's a very closed person.
So it's not like I think they should never have meddled because it wasn't any of their business. I just don't think...
But there's a difference.
They should have meddled in the way that they did and when they did.
Yes, and use a different word. Meddling is not okay. Coaxing, when you're giving advice, when you're setting things up a little bit so that coincidentally they might be in the same room so they might have a chance to talk.
But that's where I say that scene in the garden when they force him to go to Renoa, I feel that was meddling and that was forcing.
It was weird. Illogical meddling.
It shouldn't have happened that way.
Weird, illogical meddling.
I'm like, that wasn't fair. He is the leader of Garden. Now
it's
you are actually
no matter what he does,
him.
Now you did that wrong too. He's like probably the most mature member of that entire group, even at the beginning of the story. He is even more mature than Quistis, because she pulls a lot of little temper tantrums if you really think about it. When you get bossy with people and pull like, yeah, well, you know what, I'm ranked above you, do what I say. She's a little... And yet everybody through the entire drama is babying him. Like, they have to guide him because he doesn't... Sorry, it's a game. He's such a... He poor little boy doesn't know what to do unless we help him along the way. Like,
there are some places where I'm like, I'm sorry, they're just downright meddling.
Other places, yeah,
they're pushing and coaxing and nee. And some of it, you can say it's Quistis teasing her little brother. But like you say at the bridge scene, you're like, yeah, it's going a bit too far.
Some of them, at least. Like you said, some of them weren't as bad. I don't remember every single one of them's reaction.
The bigger problem I have with that part is that you're like, dudes, this is a little serious. She is literally unconscious. You don't know what's going to happen to her. You shouldn't be treating her as she's just sleeping. She's not.
Mm-hmm.
She's unconscious. Like, you don't know if she's going to live or die. Squall is really worried about her.
Yeah, like he's literally, this is a life or death thing, and y'all guys are like, she's so cute when she's asleep. It's like, hold on, what? I'm not quoting words. I'm getting the impression of what I remember of their reaction.
Yeah.
The vibe that I remember is that they were literally teasing him, and I'm like, this is inappropriate teasing. This is basically like bullying teasing. This is the wrong time to be teasing.
Yeah, because it wasn't necessarily like about her. It was the fact that he went and crossed that whole bridge and whatnot, and they're just like, oh, you didn't have to do that. You know, we were going to come with Eddie anyway. Eddie was going to come here anyway.
What took you so long, dude? We've been waiting here for hours for you.
Which I will never understand how they got past him anyway, when you're like, the only way to get over there was cross that bridge. How did you guys get across that bridge without walking past him? I will never understand that.
It is really late.
Yes.
Squall is so awesome. The journey he goes through, the growth he has, and yet the other characters don't do that. Even though they needed to. Okay, like you said, I didn't mean they didn't do any growing at all. I just mean in comparison to what I feel like Squall and even Renoa did, there's some of the others that I'm like,
just under them is Zell. because he calmed down.
I mean, even
quite
Irvin
a
too,
bit
because he
and
got
was
less
able
arrogance
to
and more
think more and actually be rational about things more.
Yes.
He was actually able to calmly, rationally think through things a lot easier.
Yeah, he was pretty reliable at the end of it. And him and Squall were actual friends at the end of it, which shows you that both of them did some maturing.
Part of it's Renoa, the teased and bullying.
And she was also a...
There were some parts where I'm just like,
spoiled.
you had...
Spoiled brat is what she called her.
She was. I mean, her intentions were good.
But that's what I said. This is a classic example of intentions are not enough thing.
The way she was undermining them being a seed and them holding to their values as seeds, and then for whatever reason focusing it all on Squall.
Just as an off theory, I didn't want to get into weeds of theories, but this is actually grounded in possibility of being real. Did Seifer ever say anything about Squall before Renoa met
I think when they thought he was dead, that she did say she spent a summer with Seifer.
From what I remember, it was a few months at least that they did know each other.
Which, like you say, makes sense that she'd probably heard of Squall. If she had heard him by name, she wouldn't be able to put a face to a name.
But I cannot see Seifer never talking about Squall because he did not like Squall. They were rivals. You talk about people you don't like. It's like, oh, so thank goodness I get time spent with you and I don't have to spend any more time with that. Look, Squall.
Yeah, some of her ire was from that. But at the same time, I'm like, you could question their ideals because it doesn't make sense to you. But the way she kind of undermined it all sometimes.
She calls herself a freedom fighter? Yeah, she's like one of those freedom fighters. So it's that freedom fighter mentality where it's like, this is the cause that everybody should be fighting. And, like, people do that all the time.
Yeah, and she was trying to ask questions and understand, but there were a couple of times there where you're like, girl...
She was still kind of asking them in a way that it must fit with this somehow. It wasn't until after,
also does apologize.
Later. Yes.
Yeah, because she in the forest, just before Galbadia, she does apologize.
Yeah, because she finally figured some stuff out. She figured that, okay, the questions I was asking, I wasn't asking because I actually wanted to learn. Now I do want to learn. I think in a way, her being a freedom fighter was more of a temper tantrum than it was anything. I don't think she even really understood why she was being a freedom fighter.
Well, especially once you get to General Caraway.
Yeah, exactly. Once you find out how he treats her and the fact that... What happened to Julia? I forget. She died?
She died. I don't remember how. Rain died in childbirth. Julia died when Renoa was young.
So Renoa grew up without a father.
Mother.
She grew up without her mother.
And her father was a general.
Yes. It's a hard dynamic when a girl grows up with only a father without a mother figure, which she didn't have. Just like it's hard for a boy to grow up without a father figure. But, like, growing up with him, and he's a general, so he's away, and he's strict because he's got military background and all this stuff.
Yeah.
She's like one of those classic examples.
She acts like a spoiled brat. I don't think she was spoiled, considering the little bit General Caraway was
like spoiled in the sense where she expects everybody to, the seeds to follow her command and treat her like a princess.
Of her little group, too, so... She basically expected them to kowtow to her because she was like, well, I'm paying you, so...
Basically, she's like, but it was the leader because I have the money, and they're like, but girl, we've got the brains.
We also have our responsibilities, too. So I'm like, don't not question it, but it doesn't make sense. It's spoiled in the sense
possibly not by her father, but by other people because
but it was the way she was doing it.
And she expected you to spoil her and treat her like she was a princess and the boss, and they're like...
Yeah.
But you haven't proven that you have the ability or the know-how to hold the position you're saying you're holding.
When you're like, there's a couple of times there where Selphie does the same thing, and she's like, well, no. My leader said no. My rules of seed said no. Like, there's just a couple of little scenes.
And I just wanted to mention some of that again. Renoa, like I said, does some maturing. But yeah, literally nobody stands up to Squall. Squall and Laguna. And by the way, Laguna has ADHD. But he's more like my own experience with ADHD than Zell is. Or maybe that's just a personality difference. I don't know. Either way, moving on. What else can I say about this one? Whether it's because it's the first one I played or not, it's definitely one of my favorite battle systems overall. I like most of the characters, even though I also extremely annoy at some of them for some things, as you just heard. And even if they mesh together in the long run, they are still uniquely standalone. But the main theme and sub-themes were straightforward and pretty well done in my opinion. And, what would I change? Speaking of background stories and complications, I was referring to Edna versus Adele versus Ultimecia, etc., which I'm not going to go into.
Edna through the whole friggin' thing, don't you?
I was going to mention Laguna with his friends, Karos and Ward. My word, the pieces you see. Oh my word, I love Laguna. But still, I don't quite understand how they all fit together. But
and I think
wouldn't that be an epic
it in chronological order?
Like a whole other game to be made? I always assumed you were seeing in chronological order.
There's
a couple of scenes where I'm like, I don't understand how that fits next.
Squall story and Alone and what happened there at the orphanage that I think is slightly.
But even some of the others, maybe it's just because there's such a big chunk missing. And then
no,
they
because
it sound like a big chunk, but it felt like
you see them at Lunatic Pandora. They fall. Laguna, Chucks, Paris, and Ward off, and then says they jumped off the cliff and get into that huge battle that you don't see at the bottom of the cliff where they get injured and Laguna almost dies and Ward gets his throat slashed and he loses his voice because of it. That's what separates them. It took Kairos a year.
Not entirely sure.
Because I feel like Laguna...
they're actually doing
I
in
feel
their
like
life.
Laguna says they were Galbadia soldiers for the longest time.
I know,
and
but
they were picking up
really
side jobs. How do you think Laguna ended up in the suit with a gunblade fighting a dragon that was supposed to be Kairos, but Kairos got scared off by the ruby dragon, and then you have to go through that whole flicking thing where you're like fighting the ruby dragon, and then it's like, well, scratch this, and then he goes back to his gun, and that was how they were making money.
It's like, the sword is too useless. Give me my gun.
That was how they were making money. The lunacy of Laguna. But you don't remember that scene?
No!
Now we say the dragon.
That's why I was laughing.
Kairos finding Laguna again, and I think they were looking for Alone at that point in time. I think. But they were trying to make money for their travels.
At one of these points, if I ever get to play that game again, I should write down what's happening in each of these scenes and like...
Pretty sure they are in chronological order. They're just not telling you how much time is passing between them. Because I think it took Laguna like 4 years to find Alone.
Some of these numbers are in the game. I just forget.
And then he was in Esther for I don't know how long. Him, Kairos, and Ward was in Esther for I don't know how long.
After what they've done to Final Fantasy VII, I'm going to say it here. Don't you touch Final Fantasy VIII. Because I would love a remake that gives me better graphics and perhaps more of the backstory. Though that would probably be better as a separate game because it's too much to have Squall's full story and Laguna's full story in one place. That would be way too much. Back when I first played the game, I said rather than a remade game, they should actually make 2 or 3 movies out of it. Like, this was a good game to play. But if you really wanted to get into the actual story, it would be better to just make some movies so we have like an uninterrupted flow of here's your story. And that brings me to the last comment I want to make, and that is that I legit had an idea I wanted to carry out so bad over not just a decade ago, but like 2 decades ago when I first played this game, that thinking about it right now, I still would love to do, but it would be so much work. I would have to have help with it, and that is this. I would love to make Final Fantasy VIII into a book, and as faithfully as possible to that original script, and the actions / dances / personality traits and quirks and etc. of the characters, and write a full book. Either one huge one, or it might actually probably be better as a short series, and there you go. Final Fantasy VIII as a written story. Man, do I ever want to do that so bad. I'm about ready to find a recorded walkthrough and get busy with it. And like I said, to be extra clear, I am not talking about a fan fiction. I'm talking about the actual original script written out in the game for you, and the action / story. Take the game and make it into a book. Oh, that'd be so cool. And there you go. That's the brief, short version of all kinds of stuff and the thoughts of the characters in the game of Final Fantasy VIII. I don't know if you found that interesting. How much of that did you agree with? What are your opinions? I love Final Fantasy VIII, and I always will. This is literally 3 times longer than the original thing. Half of the original thing might be completely out of it, because by the time we actually get to what I said, we already said all that way back there. Because you jumped the gun.
Sorry. And I am not ADHD, so there.
Edna.
You can guarantee if you had put that up, your comments would have exploded.
It's not my fault. Just because I didn't see her name, so I forgot. I probably knew that was wrong. Edna and Edea are not that far apart. They're very, very similar. Spell it on the screen. They're very, very close.
Very similar, but at the same time.
If you say that's too common, her
She's
husband's
not
name is Sid.
We're not incredible as you hear, you know.
Her husband's name is Sid. Edna's not that far-fetched. You just can't name a bad guy Edna. So she has to be Edea to make it sound more like...
name her Edna because her name's not Edna. It's been like 22 years her name is Edea.
I knew that! I didn't even write her name in the script. Every time I said her name, it wasn't in the script.
Well, you would have been saying it right if you'd had to write it
Exactly.
in the script.
I wasn't going to talk about her, but because I mentioned her when I hadn't looked her up, my brain went like, choo, and stayed there. At least I was consistent.
Yeah, at least you were consistent. But you never corrected yourself either.
Consistent with the wrong name. Whatever. We better be done because I am stopping this video because we have to stop because we've been going on for way too long and it is way too late.
Yep.
Only enough for the original to know why on earth we started talking about that.
Yeah, well,
this is
just wait till we get to 9.
I legit think it's a good game. Except for those minor irritations at the characters. And I absolutely adore Squall and Laguna. So, thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment if you want to leave a comment. Just be careful how you word stuff, please. Be polite. Don't be rude. Don't be gross, etc., etc. Bye.